What's the biggest challenge or hurdle that you've had to overcome in one of these like longer endurance races? Was it mechanical, physical, mental?
Longest. I've had long rides I did in the summer that were races, and I cramped up and I was laying along the road screaming because both my legs were in knots. It was like somebody stopped and grabbed my legs and got me back on the bike and going. That's not fun when that happens to you. I did a ride in Texas with Lance Armstrong once. Same thing. I laid down and somebody else was laying there too, and there were fire ants along in the ground biting
Oh no.
the heck out of you. Oh my god, that was nasty. But generally, I don't think I really had a really bad. I mean, when I did the bike across Maryland, that was very mental. You're tired because you're riding and and my friend told me he's a ultra cyclist, an ultra marathon runner. He says, just remember, Blaise, keep pedaling. Doesn't matter what,
Okay.
just keep pedaling. I had that in my head the whole time I was riding across the state, whether I was climbing up a big mountain or tired or hungry or whatever. Keep pedaling.
Yeah, that sounds like a
That's a
mantra. Just
mantra
keep
for
repeating.
you, and you'll get through it. And that's the thing. I think if you talk to anybody that does long races or rides, some of these long, I mentioned the one in Kansas, they do 350 miles. Some people don't finish it. They get a flat tire or mechanical and they're stuck, at a gas station. But
Hmm.
the guys that do, even the senior racers, these professional, you get professionals go out there and try to do this race. They say it's 80% mental, and they all go through a dark place for a while and then you come out of it. So like, if you just keep going, you'll come out of that dark place, whether it's pain, mental pain. You're sitting there crying, what the heck am I doing here doing this,
Hmm.
And then 5 miles down the road, the sun will come out and you'll feel better. It's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like life.
So what is yeah, right? You just put your head down
Keep
and
going, keep
power
plugging
through
away.
it. Keep
Yeah,
pedaling. That's you should just did a bunch of t-shirts. Just say keep pedaling.
exactly.
You mentioned that you wanted to do a race in every
Hmm.
state. Is there one in particular that you haven't done that you're like one day, it's a kind of a bucket list, like I want to do this one because of, the scenery or
Yeah,
whatever it is?
I want to ride what's called the Dolomite region in northern Italy. So there's
Oh,
this.
okay.
I think it has 60 switchbacks that go like this all the way up the mountain, and it's a huge climb. I think the biggest mountain I ever did or climb was in Colorado. I did this like 4 years ago. I went out there for 2 weeks. My cousins there stayed, and I met up with somebody I met on Facebook, my friend, and she said, "Hey, why don't you stick around? We're going to ride Mount Evans, which is 14,000 feet, right?" And I'm like, I
Wow.
don't know if I could do that. I was like, okay. And you got to get climatized to the altitude. So I think it was the second last day before I left. I was there 2 weeks, and I actually beat them to the top. But we started at 6,500, 7,000 feet in Evergreen, and we went up 6,600 feet in 33 miles to the
Wow.
top of that 14,000. And there was snow, at the top. This is in July. There's snow up on top of the mountain. There's wind, and it was the same thing. Just keep pedaling. It was like really slow going most of the way, but I made it up. And you know what? Going up wasn't the hard part. The hard part was actually coming down, because when you got up, we started, it was like 75,
Hmm.
80 degrees. We got to the top like 3 hours later, I guess, and it was 40 degrees with a 30-mile-an-hour wind. And
Wow.
and I had my wide wheels. So I'm up there. Thank God she told me to bring a vest and a jacket, which we put on at the top. There's mountain goats up there and all these tourists. So I start down the mountain, and there's no guardrails. You go off the edge, you're like history. But
Yeah.
I'm riding in this 30-mile-an-hour wind. I'm freezing my butt off, and I'm hugging the yellow line. There's cars coming at me, coming up. Like the first 5 miles was a little dicey getting down. And then halfway down the mountain, we saw a guy that passed out because of the altitude, and whoosh, he was laid out in the middle of the road. No cell signal. We couldn't even call an ambulance. So like I had to drive down the mountain before I get a signal and call an ambulance to go get him. But so like, yeah, stuff like that happens, but you get through it, and
Hmm.
it's stuck in my mind forever, that ride. Just like the ride in Tennessee, get lost in the middle of nowhere. I'll never forget it. So
That's a hell of an
yeah,
experience. Yeah.
it's fun. Call it a bucket list ride.
So yeah, one thing I'm curious about also is what's your recovery process like? Like, how do you what steps do you take? Maybe not on the daily,
Yeah.
but if you really push yourself, how do you recover from that 1,500-mile ride?
That's a good topic. You learn more about this as you ride more. I use several things when I'm riding. I have a hydration mix in my water that puts electrolytes and salt into your body. Summertime, I take salt tablets, sodium, because you sweat out sodium out of your body. That's
Hmm.
what causes cramping. And then afterward, you can take what's called a recovery drink, which puts those nutrients back in your body after you empty yourself out on a long ride or in the heat. Um, and then, you know, my girlfriend's a certified yoga instructor. I don't do yoga as much as I should, but doing yoga, walking, doing other things to stretch your body out. You usually want to give yourself, after a hard event like that, you got to eat usually within an hour after the ride. Make sure you replenish your body. And then I'm usually starving the day after a ride. I do a long ride and I'll
Hmm.
go eat a horse the next day. But you just got to take it easy for a couple days. But I've done long rides, like the 4 day ride across Maryland. I rode, I think, about 75 miles each day and 100 miles the fourth day. And I felt great. At the end of the ride, I was like, cool. Because I hydrated, I drank, I ate along the way.
What are you eating while you're on the bike? Oh,
I,
yeah, I
I
forgot to
eat
ask about
I
this.
eat like a Cliff Shot gel block, which again has
Okay.
nutrients, sodium, electrolytes. Now I'll stop and eat a cheesesteak, on a ride like that. I'll wolf down a hoagie or something. And you can eat a lot because you're burning like 3,000 calories on a day like that. You're just burning calories. You have to, so it's a science. I'm not a scientist. I'm not even a numbers guy. So it's a matter of taking in the right amount of calories for how much you're burning that energy. So you read about it, you learn about it, you figure it out after time. That's the trick,
Okay.
to not.
So yeah, I thought you would just be eating like Cliff Bars
No,
and protein
no.
bars and things like that. You're just all right.
I'm
Stop and get a
sure,
hoagie.
yeah,
I like
yeah.
it.
A lot of times I'll ride to a destination, have a good hamburger or something, or breakfast or whatever. I'll ride 15, 20 miles, have a sandwich, and ride home.
There you go. I
So
love it.
yeah.
Uh,